practice or are you running a business? Valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast, brought to you by Trulytics, the one and only comprehensive advisor transition management platform. This week on the show, I have Brooklyn Brock of Ellevate Advisors with me. Now, this is a really interesting one because Ellevate Advisors is fairly unique. Number one, they spell Ellevate with two L's, and we do get to that in the show. But most importantly, they focus a very unique niche, and that is other financial advisors. That's right. It's a financial advisory firm for financial advisors. They help advisors with financial planning and exit planning because, as we talk about on the show all the time, father time is undefeated, right? At some point in time, you're going to exit the business either through traditional succession planning, handing off the reins to a junior advisor, or you are going to conduct an M&A, right? Sell the business to somebody else, either a part of the business or all of the business over time, or Father Time comes knocking and says, hey, you don't do this anymore, in which case emergency continuity is needed. So we're going to get to a lot of that type of stuff on the episode, but it's really, really interesting, right? At first you're thinking, that's crazy. I don't need a financial advisor. I don't need help planning for those types of things. But the reality is you probably haven't done exit planning before, right? If you're a financial advisor. And chances are, like most other professionals, you're focused more on helping your clients and managing your business, right? Just like the dentist is focused more on helping his patients with their teeth, right? And not cleaning his own teeth. They're not sitting in the mirror, by the way, the dentist cleaning their own teeth. Probably not. I hope not. It's just kind of weird. Maybe they are. I don't know. If you're a dentist or you know a dentist, ask them. They do their own teeth or do they have somebody else do their teeth? Love to know. But anyways, the point is, it does make sense to work with another financial professional who focuses on you as an objective third party, helping you with your business, helping you with your financial planning needs, and somebody who's walked through the process of helping advisors exit the business through succession, M&A, or otherwise in the past, right? So somebody who's walked a mile in the shoes. And what's really cool about Ellevate is they do use Trulytics. So if you're a Trulytics user, or you're considering being a Trulytics user, this is a really good fit for you. So it can help you with your valuation, help you look through the KPIs and see where your business stands from a performance and in a pure benchmark perspective, and help you use all the tools, get emergency continuity set up through True Continuity and the like. So make sure you pay close attention in this episode, okay? As always, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, the YouTubes, right? And give us a like, especially on YouTube, right? Give us a like, subscribe to that channel, comment. Love to hear from you. If you have questions or suggestions for topics or the guests for the show, send those in, podcast@trulytics.com. And if you have any inquiry about Trulytics itself, swing by trulytics.com, click the contact form, or hit the little chat icon down on the right-hand corner, or just info@trulytics.com. That'll get you there, okay? All right, let's get to our conversation with Brooklyn Brock from Ellevate Advisors.
Brooklyn Brock, I have been looking forward to this conversation for 2 weeks now. So wonderful to have you on the show. Welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I have to say, and this is something you've probably never heard in your life. So I grew up in a town called Brockton, Massachusetts. Brockton is named after Sir Isaac Brock, I guess, was kind of the funny thing. So there you go. I have an affinity for you just out of the gate when I saw your last name is Brock. I'm like, that's it. I'm going to like this lady no matter what. So yeah, little stuff.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. Usually people are like, oh, Brooklyn, New York. I've been to Brooklyn or something, but never heard that one.
You getting a history lesson? This is amazing. Anyways, people don't tune in for this, but it's good to warm things up, right? I thought it was kind of fun because I'm so excited to have you on the show, specifically because of what you're doing, and you're awesome. But I want to talk about Ellevate Advisors. By the way, for the listeners out there, it's Ellevate with two L's. We're going to get to that in a second, but I wonder if you could describe Ellevate Advisors in the classic 60-second elevator pitch so people can kind of prep their brains for what it is you guys are doing.
Financial advisors rarely plan for themselves like they do for their clients. So here at Ellevate Advisors, we do financial planning and exit planning for financial advisors exclusively.
That's awesome. It's a fascinating thing just to think about that, it begs the question, and when you start thinking about it, it does become obvious, but why do financial advisors need a financial planner for their own lives, right? It's kind of like, why does a mechanic need a mechanic for his or her car or something like that? But I wonder if we could spend a little bit of time on that concept and go a little bit deeper on that. Like, why do financial advisors need a financial planner like Ellevate?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many reasons because we're all different and unique.
Yeah.
But some of the reasons that I see are in the exit planning that I'm doing. People don't always know the sale price that they should or need to get from their business. So that's where the financial planning and the exit planning kind of go hand in hand, that they are both more successful when you're doing them together. I think it's also an aspect of being a business owner that your life is so much more complex when you own a business. I mean, it affects everything, your family, your lifestyle, your time, your retirement savings, everything. So even just financial planning for business owners is huge. So I think financial planners have the same need, especially since a lot of us own our own business, that need is huge and we don't always acknowledge it.
Yeah. It's interesting. We had a prep call, as I do with every guest before these podcasts, and we spent a fair amount of time talking about how very, very common it is for financial advisors, even advisors who've been in the industry for 20, 30 years, to not feel 100% confident in their own financial picture. And I'd like to explore that a little bit more because I've spent a lot of time over the last decade speaking to leadership teams at large broker-dealers, or even, small to medium-sized ones. And the refrain is very common that it's a concern of theirs, right? That advisors aren't feeling secure in their, and part of it is, and I'm sure a lot of the other pieces, but part of it is that we're in a recurring revenue business, right? And so it's really easy to go, well, that's all right, I'll start saving more next year. I'll start, for my own, I'm still building my business. And then like all humans, we succumb to some of the traps of living in a consumer-based society, right? Where I could buy a bigger house, or I can buy a faster car or a nicer car, or I could buy that boat. Why not? I'll take more, vacations or what have you. What are some of the things that you're seeing in terms in the advisor landscape that, I don't know, like, you think cause advisors to kind of feel uncomfortable in their own, or actually be unprepared for the financial future of their own lives?
I think there are a few things that come into play. One is I was working with an advisor this past fall, and they were living in Orange County, California, and taxes are higher, cost of living is higher, so they relocated their family to Nevada. It's not that far away, so they can still meet with their clients in person if they need to. But with the pandemic, we're all working remotely, so that's not a problem. And since then, they've been able to reconnect with their kids, spend more time together, slower pace of life, and they've actually gone through that move. And then they turned around and looked at each other and they said, look how much debt we went into just in the last few years of living in California, of keeping up with the Joneses, and then adding a move and the cost of relocation on top of that. They had $100,000 of consumer debt outside of, they had a business loan. The advisor had bought their business, so still paying off that. And it's the kind of thing where we spend so much time focusing on helping our clients, which is good. That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But when there's no one to put you first for you to be the client, it's hard to take time to do that for yourself. And my husband and I experienced that. And that's part of the reason we started Ellevate, is we worked with our own financial planner. And that was totally revolutionary for us. But even just this advisor that I'm working with, when they acknowledged that they had that, and it was like, whoa, we woke up and found ourselves in a situation. How did this happen? The overwhelming shame that they felt of having debt as a financial advisor, it's huge. I think it's really hard to open up about it, but we kind of talked through it. We made a plan. And now, since then, they've gone around talking to all their clients about the value of financial planning and what they're doing to improve their own life and business and lifestyle and everything now. It's completely life-changing.
You know, I'm glad you kind of brought up the whole part of the feeling the shame, right? Because if financial advisors, again, they're human, they occupy two spaces, if you think about it, right? Like you are supposed to be, you know, this person who understands and has a command of finances and has the ability to make dispassionate, rational financial decisions and not succumb to some of the emotional stuff you talked about, keeping up with the Joneses and so forth. Because that's what you're urging your clients to do. That's what you're advising your clients to do. But they're also business owners, right? In the classic sense of a business. And being able to do a thing or advise on something and be able to do it yourself is often two different things. I mean, you see that in sports, right? A really easy example, right? It's being a coach and being an elite player at any sport, not the same. Like I can show you how to do it. I can coach you how to do it. I can see what you are doing incorrectly and what you need to improve to achieve your goals, to live up to your potential as an athlete. I can't do what you can do, right? And it's really challenging, by the way, when you're in your 40s and you have a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old who are better athletes at basketball than you are. And you're like, I can tell you what you need to do, but I can't do the ball handling that you can. Just so you know, mock me all you want. I can still coach you. Yeah, that's my son busts my chops all the time. Like, you can't do this, Dad. Anyway, but I think it's a really good kind of parallel there. One of the other things that kind of surfaces, though, is, and I think most advisors will be nodding their head when they think about this, is, you know, you are in some ways part therapist, right? For the advisor, just as they are for their clients, right? Like a lot of the conversations, it's not just, well, here are the numbers, make a decision. You have to be a guide. How do you walk that line with a financial advisor who, I mean, you're young, you're not like, you know, fresh out of high school, but like, you know, college, I mean, fresh out of college, but like you're relatively young and you're likely, especially since, you know, you're dealing with advisors who are coming up on exit planning decisions. You know, many of them might be 20, sometimes 30 years your senior. How do you help, right? When you're working with them, when they're that much kind of more experienced than you?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So I am turning 30 February 20th, 2021. So I do feel like such a baby. And it's even worse because I'm a third generation advisor. My granddad was the first advisor in our family, and my dad and uncle own that business now. So kind of like the experience component is like I've been through some succession planning, but I don't have all of the years of experience, and I've made up for it in getting a ton of designations. I think I have 4, and I'm kind of considering getting one more, but it's like, okay, calm down. But I think that is actually a secret weapon, that they expect me to not ask the hard questions. And I try not to make it more painful than it needs to be, but I'm also not afraid to ask the hard questions. I've gone through the financial planning process with my dad, and I've, you know, trained alongside my granddad as well. And he is in the traditional sense, he is a traditional financial advisor. And so I've seen everything along the spectrum, and there's nothing that really scares me or intimidates me anymore. I think it's just building the relationship based on trust with people. And something that's been hugely helpful is I've been doing some reading and even gone through the process of myself of doing life planning. So life planning is, I don't know, for those who aren't familiar, it's the George Kinder's Evoke Institute of Life Planning, and he offers several different kinds of training, but it's basically asking questions to help people understand their true purpose in life and their values, and build a financial plan where your money serves your life values, which I think is so cool. But there are a series of questions that I ask because it is more qualitative. I definitely bring it on the quantitative. I know how to do this. I've been doing it for years, and I think I love the quantitative side, but the qualitative side brings me more joy, and we do definitely spend time there during the process.
I like that you bring that up, because I think that's been a very valuable or transformative, maybe is the right way of thinking, trend that we've seen over the last decade and a half, is that shift to qualitative driven financial guidance and advice, right? And it's that life driven, right? Like, what do you want out of life? And you often, when I first became aware of it, started, talking about the process of, for the longest time, it was all about retirement. Like financial planning was all about like, what are you going to do in retirement? How much money do you need to survive in retirement? All that type of stuff. The reality is, your financial life is about choices. Like, how do you want to live your life? What do you want? Like, money's a tool that allows you to achieve the things you want to do in life, right? And so for some of these financial advisors, they may be thinking, look, I don't mind working for a long time. But I do have to face the reality that like my life might shift. Like when I'm a little older, we may want to travel a little bit more. We may want to move from Orange County, California to Nevada. We may, we want whatever it is, we may want to change some things. And the numbers are going to have to follow that, right? So it's like making those life decisions along the way. It's really, really interesting.
Well, but I think there's a difference there in that most advisors in the traditional sense, they don't ever plan to retire. They're like, oh, I could do this forever. And I think about that in my own business as well. I'm like, oh, I could see myself doing this for the rest of my life. I mean, I'm only 30, right? So like that is my foreseeable future, but you don't realize it when you get to 55, 60, and then you never have reassessed, does this make me happy? Do I want to retire? Oh, now I have to plan for that. I didn't think about that. So advisors don't really plan to retire. And I know we toss around the phrase somewhat loosely. We plan to die at our desks or die with our boots on is the commonly heard phrase. And I think that is the case for a lot of more traditional advisors. And that is part of the value that we bring, is taking a step back and asking those questions for advisors like we do for our clients. But there's also a shift, and I'm seeing this in the industry, and I am a member of a number of groups where advisors will get together and ask questions, and more people are starting to ask, what about financial planning for advisors? Like, is there anyone who does that? Is that okay that I could have someone do that for me? Like, is that allowed? Is really what they're asking. Yeah. But some advisors don't feel intimidated, or they don't put it off. They actually get excited about it. They say, I want to hire you because you can help me achieve something in my life and business that I can't do for myself. And typically those are people kind of like myself in the younger demographic, or they're starting their own RIA. I'm an ex-WEDCAN member, so I see this more and more often as part of that community. And they see financial planning differently. They haven't had the training and had the years of experience, so they get excited about it. It's a totally different attitude.
No, I agree 100%. There's a saying, and it's used again commonly in sports, that father time is undefeated, right? And it basically means, look, you can say you're going to work forever. The reality is, father time will make that decision for you if you don't make that decision, right? At some point in time, you will stop working, right? Either you'll choose to stop working because you just want to and gonna do some other things in life. The world may decide they're not going to pay you for doing that anymore. That happens. Innovation happens and wipes out job sectors. It's not likely to wipe out advisors at any time in our lifetime, I don't think. I mean, we're seeing some shift, but I don't think advisors are going away. People are always going to want that hands-on, human-based advice and guidance, and the ability to talk to somebody and kind of work through some, as you said, those qualitative driven things. But look, another fact of being an advisor is your clients are usually pretty close to you in age, right? Somewhere in that, and so, at some point in time, your clients might start to go into net redemption at best, or start to, fade away, and father time has defeated them, if you will. And your business may decline. And so you do have to start thinking about, what does that exit look like at some point in time? And that's a big part of your business, right? You call it exit planning. And some people call it succession planning, or some people call it, transition. It all really comes down to a transition. What's that going to look like? So what if we might be able to talk about that? Because when Shauna Mace, who introduced us, by the way, shout out to Shauna, ShaunaMace.com. So she got her shout out. When she reached out to introduce the two of us, this is what caught my eye. I'm like, oh, all right. So she's a financial planner who specializes in working with financial advisors. That's interesting. But she's really dialing in on like making sure that they have an exit plan. So I'm going to dial in on that. Like, what are some of the things that you do with an advisor that helps them think about that process?
I think a lot of people think about exit planning in a different way. So I was just talking with an attorney who specializes in working with advisors, and he asked me, well, what is exit planning? How do you even define it? And a lot of people have asked me, well, I have like if we got hit by a hurricane, I have another office down the street and we would just relocate there and I could run my business from there. So like that's an exit plan, so to speak. And that isn't really what we do. One person even asked, oh, I'm thinking about leaving my broker dealer here in the next few years. If I wanted to open my own RIA and exit my broker dealer, would you be able to help with that? No, that's not exit planning.
Yeah.
Exit planning, as we define it, is continuity planning, or the hit by the bus plan, where if something happened to you, whether it's temporary, go to the emergency room and you broke both your legs skiing, right? And you need to spend a few weeks in the hospital, may not be able to run your business. What would you do? Versus going into a coma and we don't know when you're going to come back. What would you do? Versus if you were actually hit by a bus, and what would your family do? Is your spouse going to have to run the business or sell the business? Do they know what to do there? I think that's the range of scenarios that we consider when we do continuity planning. And then there's succession planning, which is there is nothing unexpected. You just decide one day, hey, it's time for me to move on and do something different, whatever that looks like. If you want to exit your business and you decided to transition those clients to someone else, because that's one of the questions we look into is, do you want to sell your business, gift your business? Is that important? Or are you just going to transfer your clients to someone else, or just start referring everyone to another advisor? Is it worth it to you to go through the process of selling and succession planning? And if so, is that internal, external? We have a series of questions we ask around that. And as much as we do consult on deal terms and tax consequences to a certain extent, it is more qualitative, because that is what makes or breaks a succession plan, in my experience, is the culture fit, the personal, financial, and business factors. It's not so much the terms of the deal. Yes, that's important, but are you going to be happy during a 10-year internal succession plan? Is that what you want? Is that what the person buying you out wants? Or even if you were part of the way through that, is that still making you happy? Because you can plan something out and then plans change. So
Right.
Also reassessing along the way. So people come to me at any stage in that process, and we just kind of pick up and say, what are your pain points now? What are your goals? What are you wanting to achieve? Because it's easy to say, oh, I want to exit my business, but what are the things that you think of as making that successful? Because you have to put a little bit more thought into it.
You just hit on a lot of, basically what Trulytics does and supports from a technology perspective, right? I mean, you started out with exit planning from the perspective of emergency continuity planning, right? And so the true continuity solution makes it really easy for somebody like you and your clients to make sure that all of those components of that emergency continuity plan that you covered, right? Like, who is your emergency continuity partner? Who's the one who's going to need to be contacted in the event that you are in a coma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is that advisor, that person, right? Okay. And then who else needs to be contacted, right? You got an office. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's the landlord? Who's your administrative assistant? Who's your key contact at your broker dealer? All that type of stuff, right? What are the other elements of your key contact? So it's that emergency locker for all of those elements and the controls of those elements to be in place. And then, of course, you talked a little bit about succession planning and potentially exiting the business through an M&A activity, right? Somebody buying the business, and the true performance solution and true match and so forth, or supporting that stuff. But I love the fact that you're talking about the human element of walking people through that. I've spent a lot of time talking, especially over the last several months, about the notion of M&A, right? Of somebody buying a business. And there really is a lot of emotion in there of how are you going to handle, like you said, if you're going to stay on for another 10 years, you're going to have a glide path that looks like that, or you're going to be okay with, like, you don't own this business anymore if you sold a majority stake in it. Some advisors are doing partial sales, right? And starting to sell, I'll sell 35%. And over the next decade, I'll eventually sell the majority, and I'll glide out that way. stuff, people like yourself helping through that process. Because it's not, if you've never done an M&A, particularly in a space like this where it's all so relationship-based business, you don't own a factory that's banging out widgets, right? And the business is going to survive whether you're there or not. In most cases, most advisors are solo. If they're not solo, they're in a very small shop. The average RIA has fewer than 5 advisors under one roof, right? So these are really small businesses. Even if they have billions of dollars of AUM, they're still crazy small businesses. So having the guidance is really, really important.
Well, I think you brought up an interesting point there, which I'll just for a minute, I will like to mention that a lot of advisors have built an amazing business, right? And it is worth a lot of money. And we'll go through that valuation process with them. We actually do use Truelytics, specifically True Performance and True Continuity. So we have that to leverage. But I think the question is not asked often enough about what does the buyer want? What is a good fit for the buyer? Because it is a relationship. I mean, the business is relational with the clients, but the running of the business, even between the buyer and the seller, the partners there, it is still relational. And I think we don't spend enough time thinking about, well, is this making you happy? Like, are you comfortable with the way things are going? Is there anything that you would want to change? Because it is going to be their business. They're going to start making decisions. And I think sometimes the buyer and seller are operating on different value systems and they want different things and they see the business differently. So coming together and having an annual check-in meeting to say, how are you doing? Or what are you thinking about the long-term growth of the business? Those kinds of things are what we encourage as well. And I don't see that happening as often. I do see it happen. Credit to the awesome advisors out there who are doing that. But I think it's something we encourage as well.
Yeah. It's so smart and so important. Let's dive in a little more into this decision to go at a niche. Let's kind of go more to your business mindset. Because it's something that we advise. I've been advising this for, again, 10 plus years, telling advisors, hey man, like a niche-based marketing is really, there's a whole bunch of benefits to it, right? It becomes more efficient. Clients are easier to identify. Once you've solved a problem for one client, a lot of the other clients tend to look the same. And so you're basically solving the problem repetitively. It's easier for referrals, as you were talking about, like they start to send you other ones. But I wonder if you might share some of the challenges you faced so far in the process to pivoting to the niche. Because I think that's important. Like oftentimes when we think about things, we start to see the success in it. We start to see the traction. It's really easy to go, yeah, it's awesome. Of course, it was a no-brainer, right? But if you ever talk to a business owner and you ask them about some of the war stories, pretty quickly they were like, oh yeah, you got, how much time do you have? And let's get some drinks,
Yeah.
So what if you might mind sharing like maybe a couple of challenges that you faced so far that you've had to overcome as you decided to pivot to serving this niche?
Oh, I would love to share because I feel very proud of what me and my team have built. I couldn't do it without them. We are profitable, which, I mean, we're celebrating our 1-year birthday. My business turns 1 the day before I turn 30. So it's like
nice.
Huge celebration. Yeah. So like 1 year old, we're profitable. Like we have achieved so much, but it is not without the battle scars.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that stands out really in my memory is I was on the phone with an advisor talking about starting a SEPA chapter. That's one of my designations, is Certified Exit Planning Advisor.
Okay.
And he looked at me on Zoom. We were on Zoom, and he looked at me. He's with a BD. I'm, independent RIA, coming from completely different worlds. And he said, I cannot think of a single advisor who would ever hire you.
Oh,
and yeah, I was like, well, that's fair. He probably, doesn't know any advisors. And with BDs, like they do have a lot of resources. That's something that my dad and granddad leveraged, is they had someone from their back office do my granddad's plan to help him, mentally process, oh, I do have enough to retire. So there you go, the value of financial planning. But it came from the BD internally. So I think that's completely fair that maybe there's more traction with some advisors than others. And it was hard for me to process and believe, right? Because I was only a few months into my business at that point. And I think my membership with XYPN helped me really understand the value of what I'm doing and that there is a need for it. And especially the advisors who have been calling me from XYPN, and they get really excited about it too. So that's kind of how I conquered that. And the other two things that made it really difficult for me to get started in my first year in this niche specifically was, one, I had my CFP, CHFC, CKA, which stands for Certified Kingdom Advisor. So I had these designations, but what could I get that sets me apart with the exit planning specifically? Because I am a financial planner. I am not an exit planner. I didn't know how to do that. Yeah. And I got the CEPA designation. I was also looking at the CEXP, which is Certified Exit Planner, and that's through what's it called? BEI, Business Exit Institute, maybe. And I chose to go with the Certified Exit Planning Advisor designation, the CEPA designation. So that was a journey to do that research, to talk to people, and that was really helpful to take their training and say, okay, what are the components of exit planning? And then the other aspect of that was I looked for a year before I found Trulytics. Like, that is the solution technology-wise that I was looking for. Yeah. So just the ability to do the valuations is huge. I used to refer out for that, and now we can just do it all in-house. And I think that makes the whole process more succinct and more valuable to advisors as we're going through it.
You know, you hit a couple of things that I think are so important for any new business owner to really stop and think about. Like, you are going to bump into some people who say to you, no, not only are they going to say, no, I don't want to do that, but they're going to try to throw some cold water on your vision for the world and say, no one would do this. First of all, how do you know, right? In your brain. And one of the things that especially, this will sound ageist, if you will, right? But I think we all do fall victim to this, right? We look at our own personal experience and we project out that must be the way that everyone else thinks, right? So I remember back in the early days when I was evangelizing the use of social media for financial advisors, right? Just saying, listen, so financial advisors, you're gonna want to use social because your clients are on there, your prospects are on there, your referral partners are on there, and most importantly, your competitors are on there. And I can remember advisors going, "My clients are not on social." I'm like, "Are you?" And I remember just looking at them like, "Are you sure? Have you looked?" Like, you're going to make that statement, like, but it was their own discomfort. Like, I don't use Facebook. I don't spend any time on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. So therefore, why would somebody else that I consider a peer or above me do that? Like, we deal with high net worth people, Mike. So they're not on Facebook. And you're just like, are you kidding me? And, you know, I've seen it even recently in a couple of years or B2B scenario where, like, listen, our clients, there's no way other CEOs are going to be using social. It's not an effective thing. It's like, well, just be careful. Just because you don't doesn't mean this is a false thing. And you have to overcome that. That's it. That's your own kind of, like, we're talking about a lot of this. We're talking about the emotional thing. Like, you have to be able to take that hit and go, all right, if you get that same feedback like hundreds of times, and you've kind of had some different random, you've talked to independent financial advisors in the broker-dealer scenario, you've talked to RIAs and so forth, and you've done that a couple of hundred times and you're still getting no. Okay, maybe you're down the wrong path. But it always stings when it's one of the first ones, you know? It's just, It does sting. And then I like the fact that you also talked about overcoming the technology hurdle. I like, particularly that found Trulytics is awesome. But you and I, before we click the record button and we're recording on Zoom for this, we're going with another solution that I'm in the process of really, standing up and testing out here. And we experienced a tiny bit of technical difficulties. And there is that iterative thing of trying to find solutions because, doing it manually or doing it, with legacy stuff, you can do it, but it can be more challenging. So you're always looking for, and just don't give up that search for the right technology solution to do that. And if it doesn't exist, you can actually create it or start pinging like solutions that are close. This is one of the advices I would always tell people is you'll be blown away with how responsive technology companies are. Trulytics being case in point. If the stuff that you're doing, if you keep running into the same problem or the same, like, I wish I could also do this. This is something that's chances are, it's kind of like when you're a kid and the teacher would say, don't be afraid to ask a question because chances are somebody else in this room has a question. Don't be afraid to suggest a feature request because chances are somebody else who's using the product has that same request, right? So anyway, I think it was awesome that you found Trulytics. Let's shift to the positives. Because this is also like, there's also inevitably some delightful surprises that happen when you start a business and you start down a path. So what have been some of the things that you like, you're just like, that is awesome. I didn't expect this in working with this niche.
There are so many things. The first thing that came to my mind was I have an assistant and my husband just got his MBA. So he's like my COO, CSO, CTO, everything.
Yeah.
And then my husband's sister is my assistant. So it's like all a family business. And that's one of the things I love the most. But about the niche specifically, I think I have so enjoyed connecting with other professionals in this space because it has always felt like exit planning is so complex. And that's part of what intimidated me so much is like, where do you even start? And that's one of the reasons people give me about like why we've pushed it off. And it's easy to procrastinate if you don't know, like, well, you do this, 1, 2, 3, there you go, you're done. So that is something that I found a lot of joy in is connecting with the other professionals in this space and finding, oh, this advisor specializes in doing succession planning and continuity planning documents for advisors alone.
That's
and
great.
It's just, yeah, it's been so exciting that there are other people who are passionate about this as much as I am. And I think the other piece is the ability to make it simple and make it accessible. And kind of solve that problem that people are saying, oh, it's complex. There are so many legal issues to talk through. Well, we've been able to partner with several different people and come up with templates and solutions. And we're actually launching a course the first week of April. It's going to be how to start to finish, do your own continuity plan. So you don't have to hire me. Like right now I'm doing hourly, we would just decide on the number of hours you need to complete your continuity plan and we'll work on it together till it's done, right? But you don't have to work with me one-on-one. We're trying to make a cheaper, simpler, more accessible solution for people that just checks all of those boxes. And that's something we're leveraging Trulytics with. So the Trulytics would be part of that. And they would watch a number of courses of me talking through, the definition of exit planning just for starters. And that's something we're excited to release as well.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see it. All right. So as we wrap this thing up, I saved this for the end because it's one of, I don't know, it's a passion point for me right now, like particularly right now that as we're in, closing in on a year into this pandemic experience. You're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. I've never been to Tulsa, and frankly, I've never been to Oklahoma at all. I'm in Texas, and I'm told I'm supposed to automatically hate Oklahoma, just so you know, especially in Austin.
Oh.
I'm not a native Texan, but if you ever go to a UT Longhorns game and the Oklahoma sucks chant gets pretty loud, apparently they do not. But anyway. That being aside, so apparently there's a rivalry, which is really a blast as an immigrant to the state. It's a blast to see. But when you think about Tulsa, Oklahoma, you don't think, you know what, that is a hotbed for financial services and innovative startups. But here you are, and where I get really passionate about this is I love the fact that you're in Tulsa because we're in this new era here, and it's existed for a few years, but I think the pandemic has really shined a light on it. And you actually teed it up at the early part of this conversation that you can run your business from anywhere. You can be in Tulsa, where your family is from, your roots are there. There's probably a whole bunch of other reasons why you love living there, cultural reasons and what have you. Again, it's your home, but man, you're not restricted to serving clients all over the country. How have you embraced that over this last year of starting the business, and what are some of the things you've done to really just leverage the fact that, you know, I'm in Tulsa, but I can reach other people? Like what's kind of in your stack, if you will?
I think my answer to that would be that the pandemic has helped my business grow like 100 times more so than if we had not had a pandemic, because I do not have office space. I'm in my home office. This is my old dining room. And we got like the special lights and we do filming, and I've hung my diplomas and everything. And so whenever I do calls with people, they're like, "Oh, you look so professional. Are you working from home?" Yeah. Yes.
Yes,
And
I am.
I got to last fall speak at several conferences where if they had been in person, I would not have been able to afford, as a new business owner, to travel and go to that conference at all. And so when they decided to move the conference to be virtually and they were trying to scramble to fill slots for speakers, I applied for that. And just the opportunity there is huge. And so I do have a great online community of people that I've gotten to meet, conferences that I've gotten to speak at, doing podcasts like this. Like now it's part of our marketing plan that I leverage the social media strategy that you were talking about earlier. Yeah. That is where I run my entire business. I don't have face-to-face meetings, and I work with advisors across the country, like East Coast to West Coast, and gotten a lot more familiar with the time zones. So I mean, it's such a different business. Like my dad is also an advisor, right? So like I'm looking at his business and I'm like, wow, the differences, it's huge. And I love it. It's a great solution for me. It's been a dream come true, really.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that I've just been, you know, they're increasingly true, right? Like one is, as people, we are increasingly more comfortable with this, right? Like I feel like I know you already. We are face to face on a screen, and we've never met in person. Hopefully, the world does put us together. We get to actually see each other in person and sit down and have lunch, beer, whatever, or just hang out.
Yeah,
I really do hope that happens, right? But people are comfortable with this, whereas they weren't before, right? But now, like everybody has done a Zoom. Right at the end of this year. And again, the pandemic accelerated that. But even before that, people were getting comfortable with a quick Zoom or a FaceTime or whatever. I remember we moved from Boston down here to Austin, and thank God for FaceTime and Skype and things, because you know, I had kids. They were little kids, and there was 3 months where I was going back and forth and getting settled here, and the house is still on the market. My son was finishing kindergarten up there. So it was one of those, like, I can't imagine how I would handle it not being able to see kids. So that's helping. And the technology cost has come down so dramatically, right? The stuff we're doing now, I mean, you mentioned you have some lights. You can see I have some lights there. I've got some lights actually behind my monitor that kind of throw back on me. The technology cost has just come down so dramatically, right? Just so dramatically. It's off-the-shelf stuff. Zoom Pro account is less than $20 a month. You know, all these other solutions are just relatively inexpensive. High-speed internet is affordable in most parts of the country. So it's just fascinating that we can do this. So it's awesome. I love the fact you're in Tulsa, even though we've never met. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, I'll throw in a little pitch for Tulsa. It's an amazing community. We have 36 Degrees North, which is kind of like a new business startup space where you can rent an office space that have a community. And there are several other spaces like that. And I think foundations like the Kaiser Foundation, Tulsa is very charitable oriented. And so you'll see foundations like that doing drives to bring people to Tulsa and to welcome the new businesses and the startups. So not only is that exciting, but if you ever come to Tulsa, we have a river that runs around, kind of like around the edge of Tulsa. And they actually have a trail on either side of the river. And I, being a marathon runner, have taken full advantage of that trail. You can actually run like several marathons if you go along the whole trail, and it's beautiful, and it's a wonderful place to live.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. That is something that I don't think is in my future, running marathons. I just, I don't mind running. Just, you know, that just seems like crazy town to run that long.
Well, come visit, walk on the trails, and we'll get lunch.
I'll walk on the trail. So as we wrap it up here, I am sure there are lots of people going to want to follow up with you. But I there's one tiny question that I said I would ask at the beginning that I never got to the bottom of. Ellevate is spelled with 2 L's. What is the origin of that before we get to how people can connect with you?
Oh, you're waiting for some amazing origin story.
Yes, I want to know. I want to know.
Well, so I guess part of it is that I speak French, and I mean, you talk about running your business virtually. Part of my long-term, like 5-year plan is that I might actually get to live part of the year in France and
Nice.
operate my business remotely. So we'll be researching that over the next few years, but continuing to work with all the same clients, do business as usual. And Elle is actually the French word for like her or she
Yeah.
in French. And me being a woman, like that was subliminally important to me. And also Ellevate. EllevateAdvisors.com was the one that was available when I went to purchase the domain name. So.
I love that. By the way, that is so true for so many companies now. It's like, well, yeah, that's the domain we could get, right? I didn't want to spend $10,000 on a different domain name, so this is how it's got to be spelled. Deal with it, right? We took the E out of the ER. It's supposed to be it just ends in R. That type of thing. Anyway, Ellevate with 2 L's. Advisors.com. So I said that's a great way for people to connect with you. You're also very active on LinkedIn and other social networks as well. So we will make sure that gets linked up in the show notes so people can reach out and connect with you. Brooke, it's been wonderful to chat with you. Thank you very much for joining us on the Modern Financial Advisor podcast.
Thanks, Mike. It's been good to be here. I hope advisors get a lot of great information out of our talk today, and I'm happy to maybe come back in the future.
Sounds great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us for this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's always fantastic to have you. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Brookly. It's very, very timely, right? We talked a little bit about the whole, here in 2021, we can all run our businesses from everywhere. Tulsa, Oklahoma, who would have thought? Vibrant business in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like I mentioned, not thought of as the hotbed for financial innovation, but here she is, right? Creating a really cool business there. I love that is happening there. I love the notion that there's more attention and more professionals are coming into the space to help advisors with transition management, because as we talk about routinely on the show, there's likely to be a large wave of advisors transitioning out because again, average age of an advisor is around 60-ish, right? Most advisors don't want to work until they're 85, 90. So, we would expect to see some transitions. And if that's you, whether you're on the sell side or the buy side, right? The advisor who's looking to exit or looking to acquire, make sure you check out Ellevate Advisors. And of course, swing by Truelytics.com and use that contact form or that little chat icon down at the bottom. Okay? As always, please do make sure you're wearing your mask, keeping your distance, and my favorite, be nice to each other, okay? We will see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. See ya. Bye.